50 utterly silly stories. The Four Little Children Who Went Around the World by Edward Lear. Once upon a time, a long while ago, there were four little people whose names were Violet, Slingsby, Guy, and Lionel, and they all thought they should like to see the world. So they bought a large boat to sail around the world by sea, planning to come back on the other side by land. The boat was painted blue with green spots, and the sail was yellow with red stripes. When they set off, they only took a small cat to steer and look after the boat. Besides an elderly Quangle Wangle, who had to cook the dinner and make the tea, for which they took a large kettle. For the first 10 days, they sailed on beautifully and found plenty to eat, as there were lots of fish. They had only to take them out of the sea with a long spoon, when the Quangle Wangle cooked them, and the Pussy Cat was fed with the bones. During the daytime, Violet Shiftfly occupied herself in putting salt water into a churn, while her three brothers churned it violently, in the hope that it would turn into butter, which it seldom, if ever, did. In the evening, they all settled into the tea kettle, where they all managed to sleep very comfortably, while Pussy and Quangle Wangle managed the boat. After a time, they saw some land at a distance, and when they came to it, they found it was an island made of water quite surrounded by earth. It was perfectly beautiful and contained only a single tree, 503 feet high. When they had landed, they walked about, but found, to their great surprise, that the island was quite full of veal cutlets and chocolate drops, and nothing else. So they all climbed up the single high tree to discover, if possible, if there were any people. Having remained on the top of the tree for a week and not seeing anybody, they concluded that there were no inhabitants. When they came down, they loaded the boat with 2,000 veal cutlets and 1,000,000 chocolate drops, and this kept them going for more than a month as they voyaged onwards. After this, they came to a shore when there were no less than 65 great red parrots with blue tails, sitting on a rail in a row, and all fast asleep. And I am sorry to say that the Pussy Cat and the Quangle Wangle crept softly and bit off the tail feathers of all 65 parrots. Violet stuck 260 of the feathers in her bonnet, so it looked lovely and glittery. Next, they came to a narrow part of the sea, which was so entirely full of fishes that the boat could go on no farther. So they remained there about 6 weeks, feasting on them. Many of the uneaten fish complained of the cold, as well as of the difficulty they had in getting any sleep on account of the extreme noise made by the neighboring Arctic bears. So Violet knitted small woolen frocks for them. Then they were quite warm and slept soundly. Next, they came to a country that was covered with immense orange trees, quite full of fruit. So they all landed, taking with them the tea kettle, intending to gather some of the oranges in it. But a most dreadfully high wind rose, and the oranges fell down on their heads by millions and millions. They thumped and bumped them all so seriously that they were obliged to run as hard as they could for their lives. Besides, the sound of the oranges rattling on the tea kettle was terrifying. They got safely to the boat and, after sailing on calmly for several more days, they came to another country, where they were pleased and surprised to see countless white mice with red eyes, all sitting in a great circle, slowly eating custard pudding. As the four travelers were rather hungry, tired of eating fish and oranges for so long a period, Guy asked the mice for some of their pudding, but no sooner had he finished talking than the mice turned round and sneezed at him. At this scrubious sound, Guy rushed back to the boat. By and by, the four children came to a vast, wide plain, on which nothing could be discovered at first. As the travelers walked on, there appeared in the distance an object which seemed to be somebody in a large white wig, sitting on an armchair made of sponge cakes and oyster shells. Then the Quangle Wangle, who had previously been round the world, exclaimed softly in a loud voice, "It is the cooperative cauliflower." And it was. They soon found that what they had taken for the wig was the top of the cauliflower, and that he had no feet, being able to walk on a single stalk, which saved him the expense of buying shoes. Presently, while the party from the boat was gazing at him, he suddenly arose, and in a plumb fierce manner, hurried off towards the setting sun, accompanied by two cucumbers, till he finally disappeared over the brink of the western sky. Shortly after, the travelers sailed below some high overhanging rocks, from the top of which a little boy dressed in rose-colored knickerbockers threw an enormous pumpkin at the boat, which hit it and overturned it. Luckily, all the party knew how to swim, and they paddled about till after the moon rose, when they righted the boat and boarded it once again. 2 or 3 days afterwards, they came to a place where they found nothing at all, except some white and deep pits full of mulberry jam. This was the property of tiny, yellow-nosed apes who stored up the mulberry jam for their food in winter, when they mixed it with pale periwinkle soup and served it out in china bowls, which grow freely all over that part of the country. Only one of the yellow-nosed apes was on the spot, and he was fast asleep. Yet the 4 travelers, the Quangle Wangle and Pussy, were so terrified by the sound of his snoring, they merely took a small cupful of the jam and returned to their boat without delay. What was their horror on seeing the boat, in the mouth of an enormous sea spider, a ferocious creature, truly dreadful to behold. In a moment, the beautiful boat was bitten into 55,000,000,100,000,000,000 bits. It became quite clear that Violet, Slingsby, Guy, and Lionel could no longer carry on their voyage by sea. The 4 travelers had to make their way on land. Fortunately, they happened to pass by an elderly rhinoceros, on which they sat, and all four mounting on his back, the Quangle Wangle sitting on his horn, and the Pussy Cat swinging at the end of his tail. They set off, having only 4 small beans and 3 pounds of mashed potatoes to last them. They were, however, able to catch numbers of the chickens, turkeys, and other birds who continually landed on the head of the rhinoceros to gather the seeds of on the rhododendron plants which grew there. A crowd of kangaroos and gigantic cranes accompanied them, and they went onward in a triumphant procession. In less than 18 weeks, they all arrived safely home, where they were received by their admiring relatives with joy.